I am Dr. Ashwini Kumar, CEO and founder of CliniExperts Services Private Limited, a leading regulatory service provider from India. Today, I am sitting with Dhruv, a seasoned USFDA pharmaceutical regulatory service provider. I am happy to share that CliniExpert is now going to offer end-to-end regulatory solutions for pharmaceuticals and biotech companies who wants to enter US market. Welcome Dhruv to the MedTech Dialogue.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwini. I'm really excited to join CliniExpert. I'm really excited about the opportunity. I have been working with USFDA submitting regulatory submissions for many years. And one thing I have seen is Indian companies have great products and technical know-how about those products. However, the regulatory can be a challenge for them to enter the US market if they're not familiar with the process. CliniExperts has been a pioneer in the Indian market for regulatory submissions, and this is a great fit for me because we can together help develop a clear and reliable pathway for this company to enter the US market. It can be anything from IND submissions to ANDA filings to FDA communications, or even small things like drug listings and labelings. We can create a end-to-end use strategy for those firms to enter the US markets. For me, it's all about helping great companies cross the borders with confidence. So, Dr. Ashwini, why do you think US market is a gold mine for small and mid-sized pharma?
Yeah, Dhruv, if you see US market, they almost cater 60% of the pharmaceutical sales, which is closer to $600 billion. This is a huge amount. And we know that India is a prominent supplier, exporter of pharmaceutical product. But if you see a real statistical data, we export only $7 billion worth of pharmaceutical product to US market, which is low. And out of those 7 billion pharmaceutical sales, majority of them are supplied by larger companies. So here comes the opportunities for mid-size and small companies.
Okay.
If they can plan their journey for US FDA market and can tap US market, then their revenue can increase tremendously.
Okay. So, Dr. Ashwini, do you have any success stories to share?
Yes, happy to share two examples. We assisted one of the API manufacturer from Gujarat. They were marketing their product only in Southeast Asian countries. Then they collaborated with us. We filed their Type 2 DMF with US FDA, and they received the approvals. And now, in only 2 years, they have increased their revenue by $2 million. So that is one of the example. The second one from Telangana, a pharmaceutical formulation company. We helped them in filing 3 ANDAs. We got successfully 2 ANDAs approved. And you won't believe now that 80% of revenue comes from US market.
Oh, nice.
And one of the advantages in working with the US market, that revenue which they are getting, they will get it on time. They don't have to, once they share the invoices, they get cleared very fast.
Right. Oh, wow, that is great success stories. This example should excite the small and mid-sized Indian pharma to try and enter the US market and grow their revenue significantly. So, Dr. Ashwini, what do you think the small and mid-sized pharma need to enter the US market? And what would be your final message to these companies?
Yeah, I would like to say that planning is very important. Changing the mindset where they should not fear that they cannot enter into USFDA market. They need to identify right regulatory partners like us. We have supported them. We have supported few small and mid-sized company in the past, and we are confident to do so.
Okay.
If they have a proper strategy, proper planning, proper documentation from beginning, they can start with one product. One product could be a game changer. They don't need 20 ANDAs at one time. They can just select one product, do a proper planning, generate proper documentation, identify a right regulatory partner like us who can guide them through their entire journey. If they have one successful ANDAs, then subsequently they can target few more ANDAs, and then they can see their revenues increasing over the period of years. That would be my final message to these companies.
So you think a right regulatory partner and a US agent would open the US market doors for them, right?
Absolutely. Dhruv, could you please let us know what is a US agent?
So a US agent can be any individual or a firm who are located in the US, and they act as a communication between the firm and FDA. Any foreign firm requires a US agent, and that is mandatory. Again, US agents are not distributor partners or legal representatives. They just act as a communication between the firm and FDA because they are located domestically, whether it be ANDA submissions, NDA, IND, DMF submissions, any submissions a foreign firm makes, they need to have a designated US agent who can act as a communication link between USFDA and the firm.
Okay, so just to simplify, can I state that a US agent is someone who is locally present here at US so that USFDA can communicate easily with them?
Yes, that is correct. A US agent has to be somebody who is living in the US.
Living in this. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so a US agent has to be present locally here. So why it is legally required by USFDA?
So as per the 21 CFR 2007, which is the Code of Federal Regulations established by USFDA, it is mandatory to have a US agent for the communication between FDA and the firm. The US agent will not process any applications coming from a foreign firm if that does not include information regarding the US agent. So the US agent can act as a domestic point of contact with FDA. FDA will provide all the notices regarding compliance, application, or safety related to the US agent, which will be then shared with the firm by the US agent. So without US agent, your application will be put on hold by FDA. Your facility will not be inspected by FDA, or your products can be barred from shipment into US markets without a US agent.
Yeah, that's a very important point, Dhruv, because if this company they don't have a US agent, in a nutshell, I can say that they cannot file the application.
No, they cannot.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So that is where CliniExpert is going to act as a US agent for these companies.
Correct.
So Dhruv, what CliniExpert will do as a US agent? What are the roles and responsibilities?
So, Dr. Ashwini, US agent cannot be just a person or firms who acts as who communicates with FDA. The US agent should be somebody who has proper knowledge of these regulatory submissions, and they are aware of the timeline and the processes, how they work. So we know we we have done so many regulatory submissions and we are aware of this regulatory process. So when we act as a US agent for firms, we can help them identify all the gaps in their submissions and help them correct them before they submit these regulatory submissions to FDA. That way, help them minimize the timeline. Also, as a US agent, we are not just responsive, but we also have to be reactive in this way that we should be able to guide the firm in providing proper response to FDA. That way, the applications are accepted in a proper timelines. With our knowledge and experience with this regulatory process, when we provide this US agent service to clients, we can definitely help them identify all the gaps in their submissions to get the regulatory submissions approved as fast as possible.
Yeah. And do you think a US agent, they also need some kind of software or tools? And do they need to have some kind of software or tools to file application?
They don't need the tools or anything as far as they have the understanding of the ECTD backbones. All the regulatory submissions which are submitted to USFDA or ECTD. So as far as they have the understandings of this ECTD submissions, the US agent can compile the submission in proper format and submit it to FDA for the firms.
To all pharmaceutical companies who wants to enter US market, selecting an identification of right US agent is not just a formality, but it is a right sets of foundation for you to go in a right direction for your US FDA submissions. Okay, so for Indian companies who wants to enter US market for their generic products, ANDA submission strategy is one of the important parameters, and also how ANDA submissions can be planned ahead when they are doing a product development. So like what should be the product development strategy for the company who are planning to file ANDA submission at USFDA?
So, Dr. Ashwini, that is correct. ANDA, which stands for Abbreviated New Drug Applications, is what we file if a company wants to get marketing approval for generic products in US market. When you would like to file an ANDA, you want to plan accordingly your product development strategy where you are aligning with the FDA expectations and not just preparing documents randomly. You want to make steps your development is proper and will meet the FDA expectations. Basically, any product development for generics starts with identification of the correct RLD, which is reference listed drugs, and studying the RLD properly, including the label, strength, dosage form, and everything. Once you have figured out the RLD issue, the next step you do is you go into the bioequivalence studies and identify what bioequivalence data are required to match the RLD. And the last step would be to identify if there are any patents or exclusivities on the existing on the RLDs and how we can make sure we are not infringing them or basically make sure the patents are not being infringed. Again, the most important thing in the product development is to make sure your product development strategy meets FDA expectations and align with all the FDA requirements.
Yeah. So we can say that proper planning, identification of RLDs, conducting bioequivalence studies to prove that their product is equivalent to innovator product should be the right strategy to go for ANDA submissions.
That is correct. And also another important thing to consider in the product development strategy is the formulation challenges, especially for the modified release products or extended release products or anything like that. So you want to make sure your products are comparable in vivo, in vitro, also to the RLD before you go for the bioequivalence study. So they should meet the in vivo, in vitro criteria uh, and bioequivalence for the right product development strategy.
Yeah. So yeah, we can guide at CliniExperts. We can definitely guide a pharmaceutical company who has a generic product and want to enter into US market, starting from RLD identification till we in product development as well until we file the applications.
Correct.
Dhruv, can you please walk us through the list of documents which are required for ANDA submissions for generic companies?
So, Dr. Ashwini, just having a pharmaceutical product which is bioequivalent is not enough. Data generation should be in a way which is acceptable to FDA and should meet FDA criteria. There are two major sections in the ANDA. The first one is CMC, which is chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. The CMC part of the documents involve batch records, excipient compatibility studies, analytical procedures, specifications, validation plans, and validation procedures of these analytical methods. All of this CMC data should be generated within FDA and ICH guidelines and should meet all the ICH and FDA guidelines. The second part is the bioequivalence studies. It is important to have the right CRO who can design the bioequivalence studies based on FDA recommendations, which includes the study plan, design, population size, sampling size, and anything related to those bioequivalence studies. If we miss any of this step, it would result in a complete response letter (CRL) from FDA for our application, which would slow down the AND application process significantly.
As Dhruv explained here, is that CMC and bioequivalence studies, they are two of them are most important documentation part which a company needs to focus. So at CliniExperts, we can guide you starting from beginning of when you start to generate CMC data. We can guide you what all parameters need to be captured, what all documentation need to be generated. Even for the CRO selection of bioequivalence studies, even the number of volunteers which are required from USFDAs, they have a very strict guidelines. So it's all, and in fact, for certain products they have a specific product guideline. Dhruv, am I correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So that is where guidance from company like CliniExpert will help you to navigate your ANDA journey at USFDA. Dhruv, please walk us through what is control correspondence.
Okay, so control correspondence is the most underused tool for ANDA submissions, and many people, many firms, in fact, are not aware of this, and that you can use control correspondence for ANDA submissions as well. Control correspondence is basically communicating with FDA about your product strategy plan, making sure you are on the right track of product development before you invest months or years of time in developing the products and then realizing that FDA is not going to approve that product. When we do control correspondence with FDA, basically we are presenting with FDA our plan of how we want to move forward with the product development, and they respond within 60 to 120 days and communicate with us if our strategy is right, and this really helps us in the product development strategy. A control correspondence can be for anything like BE waiver, bioequivalence waiver, Q1, Q2, which is quantitative comparison with the RLD, any kind of waivers we need for product development with the RLD. So yes, it is one of the most underused asset for for any NDA submission, and if in doubt, we should always do a control correspondence with FDA to get a clear product development strategy.
Yes. So control correspondence is important for companies who are planning for any kind of ANDA submissions or even for IND or for NDA submissions.
That is correct. They can use control correspondence to their advantage and can save a lot of time and resources in product development.
Yeah. So to all pharmaceutical companies who are planning for their on their product strategy to launch their product in US market, it's important to get engaged with USFDA for productive communications where you will have a right sets of strategy given by USFDA themselves. So, and as Dhruv explained, that it's a most underutilized tool. So, at CliniExperts, we can solve all our queries on product development strategy. If you come to us with your queries, if we cannot solve it, then we will definitely do a control correspondence with USFDA to give you a right sets of strategy to file your applications. So Dhruv, for the final takeaways, if I have to highlight for ANDA submissions, so the first and foremost important strategy is to identify a right RLD,
Correct.
reference listed drug. Then followed by that, the facility wherever the product is getting developed should have a CGMP readiness so that in future, if the FDA is coming for inspection, the plant is ready. The third important point should be that the product development strategy should be in line with the ANDA documentation requirement without any compromise, so that once you file the applications, you don't get CRL. And the final takeaway, I would say, is to identify a right sets of regulatory partner like CliniExperts who can guide you in your regulatory journey to obtain ANDA approval from USFDA.
That is true. You missed one point, which is do control correspondence to FDA whenever in doubt.
Yes. Whenever in doubt,
Always do
control correspondence, because that is the one thing which is underutilized.
That is correct.
Yeah. And we can also assist companies to do control correspondence because they need US agent to do control correspondence.
That is true.
Yeah. Dhruv, the API manufacturer who supply their product to a formulator company who are looking to file for ANDA or NDA submissions, why it is mandatory for the API companies to register their DMF with USFDA?
It's a yes, Dr. Ashwini. Without registering the DMF with USFDA, a API supplier cannot supply products to any drug product manufacturer. Filing a DMF for the API supplier is mandatory prior to any drug product manufacturer using API for their product development. Without a filed DMF, the drug product manufacturer cannot use any API in their formulation development.
Yeah. So, Dhruv, can you walk us through what are the type of DMF which are registered at USFDA?
Yes, Dr. Ashwini. So there are 5 types of DMF. Type 1 is no longer into existence. Type 2 applies to all the API. Type 3 is for packaging materials like bottles and closures. Type 4 is for all excipients. And type 5 is for any prior authorized by FDA. In our case right now for API manufacturers, it's always type 2 DMF.
Okay. So from this context, what I could derive is that for a company who is into product development, for their API, for their packaging, for their excipients, all the materials which they are going to use in their product should have DMF registration. Am I correct to state this?
It is partially correct.
Yeah.
Excipients do not need DMF registrations. Some excipients like flavors, and those needs DMF registrations, which falls under the type 4 DMF for excipients. But yes, for API and packaging components, you need DMF, approved DMF for filing your drug product application.
Yeah, thanks. So all pharmaceutical companies who are into product development, you need to select a supplier who has a type 2 DMF registered and type 4.
Type 2 for API and type 3 for packaging materials.
Yeah.
If they have used any flavors or colors, then type 4 would go into application.
Dhruv, for US FDA application for DMF registration, so what are the facility and compliance requirement for these manufacturers?
So yes, Dr. Ashwini. So any firm which submits a DMF should be, first of all, CGMP compliant and should meet all the criteria which are listed in ICH Q7. The second thing is they should have complete sets of documents, starting from procuring of the raw materials until manufacturing of the API. They should have a proper quality assurance, quality control system in place. They should have a proper SOP system in place. They should have a proper stability plan in place and stability program in place. Basically, they would have to have everything properly completed and be ready for an inspection by FDA once they file the DMF.
So when do you think they are liable for inspection by USFDA? At what point of time?
So again, the FDA does not review the DMF until it is referenced in the ANDA. So there are very less chances of the facility being inspected until the DMF is referenced in an ANDA. But again, it's important to file DMF so that your application can be referenced in the ANDA. And once you file DMF, your site should be compliant ready for audit anytime.
So for these API manufacturers, what kind of fees we are anticipating as a government fee by USFDA, and what are the documentation which are required?
So as I mentioned earlier, once the API manufacturer files the DMF, it stays in the dormant state in FDA's documents until it is referenced by an ANDA manufacturer. So once the ANDA manufacturer reference this DMF into their submission, then FDA starts the complete review assessment of this DMF, and that's when the API manufacturer or ANDA filing company has to file the DMF fees, which is around $78,000 to $80,000 for the DMF fee. Again, if it's not referenced in any of the ANDA, then they will not incur any of these fees from the USFDA.
Yeah, so only when there is a ANDA submissions and the DMF is referred, at that point of time, these fees can be triggered.
That is correct.
And also the inspection can be triggered.
Correct.
Dhruv, let us walk through the documentation requirements for API manufacturers.
Sure, Dr. Ashwini. So for API manufacturers, they have to, the DMF includes everything from manufacturing process, control of the raw materials, like how they are procuring all the raw materials, their specifications, how they are manufacturing the process, the manufacturing process flow charts, their batch records, the specification of the drug substance, the analytical methods used in testing of the drug substance, the validation of these analytical procedures, the impurity profiles of the drug substance and their justifications, how these impurities are controlled in the drug substance, which is one of the most important things. Then the stability program, all this data has to be, even the container closure system, how they are going to be stored, what's the temperature, does it need light exposure, or we need to avoid light exposure. Everything needs to be identified in the DMF when we prepare the DMF submission. if we have all this data, we can file the DMF with USFDA.
Yeah. So the API manufacturers, you heard Dhruv what he was saying. So, but don't get don't get afraid. You can always contact us. CliniExpert can help you navigate the journey of your DMF registration at USFDA. To all API manufacturers, the DMF registration seems technical, but it is one of the smartest investment you can do as a API manufacturer. So if your plant is GMP ready, if your plant is CGMP ready, don't wait. Go for the global partnership. Dhruv, can you help us how CliniExpert, can you let us know how CliniExpert can help in DMF registration for pharmaceutical companies?
Absolutely, Dr. Ashwini. So we can do a gap assessments for them and review the documents and facility and make sure they are ready for inspection. What we can do is we can compile their documents as per ECT requirements to submit DMF to FDA. We can also make sure that the site is ready for inspection. So, we can also help if the DMF holder identifies any drug product manufacturer who wants to file ANDA, then we can assign letter of authorization to them so they can reference the DMF in their ANDA applications. And we can help the API manufacturers maintain this DMFs with their amendments and all, make sure the DMF always stays regulatory compliant. That way, anytime any ANDA manufacturers want to reference a DMF, it is available.
So for all pharmaceutical companies who are into early drug development strategy, as well as the generic companies who are modifying their dosage form into a newer formulation, the IND, the knowledge, know-how of IND becomes one of the important parameters. Dhruv, could you please walk us through what is IND and why it is important?
Sure, Dr. Ashwini. So, IND is basically a request to FDA to begin clinical trials of a new product in humans. Without this IND application, we cannot begin clinical trials in humans. IND basically compiles of preclinical safety data, the manufacturing process and their controls, and a clinical protocol which will tell us how the clinical study in human will proceed. It is important to submit this data to FDA in an IND application so the FDA can identify the safety of the drug substance and component and also our manufacturing process before they can give us a release to conduct clinical trials in humans.
Yeah. So to summarize what Dhruv says here is the preclinical studies, then your manufacturing process, and your clinical trial design. So these are the three important documentation which should be your package for IND submissions. So Dhruv, what are pre-IND meetings with USFDA and why do you think it is one of the most important steps before filing IND applications?
So pre-IND meetings helps any clinical trial sponsor or IND applicant to get in align with FDA about the expectations out of this IND. When you do a pre-IND meeting with FDA, we get the proper communication from FDA how the clinical studies would be, how the data, the design of the clinical studies would be, and what would be the sampling size and dosing size and everything we will be able to identify in this through pre-IND meetings with FDA. So this would avoid all the firms in the costly rework or formulation work or clinical work because we have already talked to FDA and got a clear idea of how we can proceed with the IND application. So it's important to do a pre-IND meeting with FDA prior to submitting an IND.
So these pre-IND meetings are in-person meetings or it is on some platform or?
No, it is done through a secure network with FDA. We prepare a whole briefing summary of these INDs, and we will ask all the questions from basic type of NDA, it would be a 505(b)(2) NDA, or it would categorize as 505(b)(1) NDA. From that all the way to the clinical studies requirements in the pre-IND meeting questions.
And do you also get a written email?
That is correct. FDA will submit a written response to each and every question within 60 days of submission of this meeting.
Yeah, to all pharmaceutical companies who are into early drug development. So pre-IND meetings are important, where you can engage, you can have a meeting with USFDA officials, and they can give you a clear understanding on your clinical trial protocols, or if they need any additional data on your preclinical requirements, they can share you the written confirmation on these things.
That is correct.
Correct? Yeah. So so how do you think CliniExpert can assist companies who are into early development strategy? How we can assist them in filing IND applications?
So once you identify a drug product, right, and you decide to go forward, you have a clear path how you want to develop the product. What we can do is we can request FDA for a meeting to discuss our strategy of how we are going forward with the product development. We can submit FDA with the data of how we want to go with the clinical studies, and based on that, we prepare a whole briefing package with FDA with all our questions, and provide a brief idea to FDA like how our process development and everything will go, and we can definitely prepare all this into ECTD requirements and submit to FDA for them.
I do remember that we had submitted one of the IND applications for one of the companies who had changed the formulation. So could you just tell me your experience, how we did that, so that we could share with the pharmaceutical companies?
So yes, we were working with a product where the existing product on the market was mainly in the tablet dosage form, and we had figured out, the client had figured out a way to put it into a suspension formulations. So when they approached us with this new formulation, we prepared the pre-IND meeting request and briefing package for FDA. We submitted it to FDA, and we also identified what kind of clinical protocol we will need to get this product approved in the market. So we submitted this pre-IND meetings to FDA, got a clear path and response from FDA, how we can proceed with our product development formulation. Once everything was done, we were successfully able to compile the IND for the client, and we submitted to FDA, and within 30 days we got a clinical hold release on that IND, so the client could begin the clinical studies.
Yeah, so in 30 days, if they don't have any queries,
yes,
the client can start the study.
That is correct.
Yeah. So to all pharmaceutical companies, if you have a new formulation, modified doses, which you think that needed IND submissions and approvals, we can help you out in setting up your meeting with FDA for pre-submissions meeting. Followed by that, you can start your clinical studies. So Dhruv, for the pharmaceutical companies who are planning to go for new drug approval submissions, first of all, let us walk through what are the type of NDA submissions.
So there are two types of NDA submissions. One is 505(b)(1), which is basically for new chemical entity, and second one is 505(b)(2), which usually has a bridging product in it. That means that there is the safety profile for this product has already been established, and we are just going for a different dosage form or different little bit strength or something. So that falls under 505(b)(2) category.
So, Dhruv, what kind of data are required to be submitted for NDA submissions?
So for the data, we need to make sure all the data we generate do meet the GMP, GLP, and GCP guidelines of FDA. For 505B1, the data would include from phase 1 to phase 3 studies. For 505B2, we will have to identify the bridging product and reference their safety profile in our NDA submission. Other than that, we need to generate the complete CMC data for the application, which includes again same batch records, analytical procedures, specifications, excipient compatibilities, stability program, validation of all this process and analytical methods. And also we will have to have the bioequivalence data from the CRO to submit a NDA with FDA.
Yeah. So, as Dhruv explained, for pharmaceutical companies who are planning to submit their new drug applications, they have to again develop a proper strategy, develop a plan that what kind of documentation they need to submit to USFDA, which remains an important factor as per any other USFDA submissions. And definitely for systemic formulation, as Dhruv said, is you need to submit your bioequivalence data, bioequivalence study data, and maybe for if you have a topical formulation, you might need to do some kind of therapeutic equivalence studies, and those data needs to be submitted to USFDA. So, Dhruv, let us walk through the role of control correspondence in NDA submissions at USFDA.
Yes, control correspondence is very important in here because the first thing you want to identify is if your application would meet the 505B2 category. If you to meet the 505B2 category, you want to make sure you have a bridging product which whose safety profile you can use in your application. And by doing this control correspondence, we will get the approval from FDA if we can file the product as 505B2 or not. The second thing is you want to also present your CMC data to FDA in this control correspondence to make sure your component is safe, identified as safe by FDA to go for a 505B2 NDA. You just want to align with the FDA expectations through control correspondence to make sure you save a lot of time during the development of your drug product. So I would say control correspondence is very important during NDA development for any drug product.
Yeah. So control correspondence, as Dhruv explained here, can help companies to again revalidate their strategy, or and then that can also save time, because if you're filing an application without something where you're not clear, it's always better to take opinion from USFDA that how to go forward on that particular applications of new drug approval. So, Dhruv, how CliniExpert can help pharmaceutical companies for their NDA submissions?
So we can help them prepare their regulatory strategy for filing this NDA. We can prepare draft and submit to FDA control correspondence on their behalf. We can also help them prepare the full ECTD submissions of NDA and help them with the life cycle management of the NDA. We can also review their documents, CMC, clinical, make sure there is no gap in the documents which can delay the approval of this NDA. And yeah, we can help them with all the issues of NDA submissions to make sure the NDA process becomes easy and it's approved fast with FDA.
Okay. So, as you have heard from Dhruv, NDA submissions are complex process. That's where initial meticulous planning is very important to go through this entire process, and that is where CliniExperts can be your trusted regulatory partner to navigate your journey of NDA submissions.